Mr. Trump is concerned about Russia-China relations, Germany-France hotly committed. The United States lost thousands of talents due to abandonment. Canada has become a new point. The appearance of a mysterious UAV of Ukraine has made Russia alert. President Putin urges to create a large security zone in Kursk. The following are the main information in today's program. U.S. President Donald Trump is concerned about closer relations between China and Russia. Outlines plans to improve relations with Beijing and Moscow. Fox News quoted U.S. President Donald Trump as saying, "As a historian, and I have followed everything, the first thing you learn is that you don't want Russia and China to cooperate." President Donald Trump doubts the basis of bilateral relations between Moscow and Beijing, that this relationship is not natural. Trump added, "Maybe now they are still friendly, but we will be friendly to both." President Trump's speech was made right after he ended the talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. After the phone call, Russia did not agree to completely cease fire within 30 days in Ukraine. Some analysts say that Trump's move to draw closer to Russia is an attempt to separate Moscow from Beijing, according to what is called a reverse niche, hinting at U.S. efforts during the Cold War to divide the two powers. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio rejected that view in February, warning that although Washington wants to keep Moscow and Beijing closer together, he stressed that the two neighbors having this nuclear weapon would not be good for global stability. President Xi Jinping declared his friendship with Putin a few days before Moscow launched a special military campaign in Ukraine in 2022. While China's access to the market has brought Moscow back to the economy before the U.S. and its allies. The Chinese government also opposed Russia's move in talks with Washington to end hostilities in Ukraine. Beijing believes that any attempt to sow discord will certainly fail. In an interview with Fox News, Mr. Trump said that China has benefited unfairly from the use of coal, while U.S. governments have previously promoted a clean energy agenda. While President Trump has spoken directly to Putin since he took office, he has not had a direct conversation with the Chinese leader. Although the U.S. has twice increased tariffs on the world's second-largest economy, he stressed that Russia wants to have a portion of our economy. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron pledged to continue military assistance to Ukraine after Russian President Vladimir Putin called for a complete end to Western military assistance to Kyiv. After a phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Putin, the leaders of the two countries pledged to continue to provide military aid to Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said, "We all agree that Ukraine can trust us. Ukraine can trust Europe, and we will not leave Kyiv." Scholz gave a keynote speech at a press conference in Berlin with French President Emmanuel Macron, who was on a trip to Germany. For his part, the French president stressed that, along with Germany, France will continue to support the Ukrainian military in the conflict with Russia. According to Ukrainian state news agency Ukinform, before the United States and Russia agreed that the peace process would begin with a ceasefire for the energy infrastructure, along with technical negotiations on the implementation of a ceasefire on the Black Sea. Chancellor Scholz said the announcement of a ceasefire on the energy infrastructure was the first important step that could be taken on the path to bringing a fair and long-lasting peace to Ukraine. According to Scholz, technical negotiations on the ceasefire on the Black Sea also have the same meaning, and the next step should be a complete ceasefire as soon as possible. Chancellor Scholz stressed that Ukraine can trust the support from Berlin and Europe, while affirming that no decision has been made without Ukraine's participation. European partners, especially in the EU3 framework, including Germany, France, and the UK, will continue to fulfill their responsibilities, but Chancellor Scholz also stressed that support from the United States is indispensable, while expressing the importance of Washington's continued military support for Kyiv. Meanwhile, according to AFP news agency, President Macron emphasized that the goal must always be kept. That is, there is a ceasefire that can be measured and verified in a fair and long-lasting peace to Ukraine. This cannot be done without the participation of Ukraine, the French leader said. A photo and a video recorded by a Russian federal drone showed an unidentified, high-speed UAV of Ukraine, showing that Kyiv is taking one more step in the development of drones. The Kyiv Post on March 18th said that on March 17th, BPLR Inform, a Telegram channel supporting the Russian Federation, posted a photo and a short video recording an unidentified UAV of Ukraine as it flew past a Russian federal drone at an unidentified location. Immediately, military analysts from Ukrainian Military News and BulgarianMilitary.com began speculating that the UAV was designed for an unusual purpose. The UAV has a vertical tail at the rear, a three-toothed propeller at the rear, a fixed front wing equipped with an aileron, and a stabilizer at the top of the wing, with a control surface, similar to a steering wheel to control the rotation. Some commentators said that the rear wing helps the drone to maintain stability, while the front wing controls the flight direction and altitude. However, from the video, analysts in Kyiv could not determine the control surface of the UAV only by the front wing. The most noteworthy feature of the UAV is that the front wing has a green tape and a red tape at the back. They speculated that the front wing could hold a camera or a missile, while the rear wing could hold an electronic system to control and guide the drone. The use of tape shows that the UAV could be a prototype and could be tested in the near future. The purpose of the UAV is not clear, but due to its high speed and Ukraine's development of countermeasures against the threat from the Russian Federation UAV, military bloggers speculated that the UAV could be designed to be used as a reconnaissance drone, or a reconnaissance drone of the Russian Federation. The UAV could be used as a sensor to aim directly at the target, or more complexly, it could be used as a proximity fuse to activate the missile when it is close to the target. The commander emphasized that over the past month, with the close cooperation of reconnaissance forces, UAVs, artillery, guns, tanks, and infantry, the Ukrainian army destroyed more than 30 Russian armored vehicles and withdrew about 2,000 enemy soldiers from the battlefield. Nayev said, "This has significantly reduced the number of Russian attacks in our direction." According to the name of the Ukrainian Interface News Agency, Nayev was appointed as the commander of the Velika Novoshilka Combat Group. This is the name of a village currently controlled by Russia, located about 20 kilometers east of the administrative border between the two provinces of Zaporizhia and Donetsk. Meanwhile, the deep state news source, an analysis channel related to the Ukrainian army, has highlighted some of the situation in the battlefield that Nayev mentioned. According to the map released by Deep State, Ukrainian armed forces have been withdrawing from the area of Skudnoye in recent days. Russian advance units are currently moving to Velikaya Novoshilka. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry announced that Skudnoye and the neighboring town of Bulatskoye were under the control of the Russian armed forces. The French LCI channel said that the Ukrainian army was exhausted and was unable to continue to confront the Russian army in practice. Many Ukrainian soldiers admitted that they were no longer able to continue fighting. They were too exhausted after 3 years of conflict to be ready to stop everything, even when they had to give up the territory to the Russians. French experts noted that Kyiv was worried about the ceasefire under all circumstances. The Ukrainian government believes that they can easily be removed from the current diplomatic talks and then have to face the defeat. At the same time, most ordinary Ukrainians, as well as soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces, hope for peace as soon as possible. It is worth mentioning that the Russian armed forces are now on the verge of becoming the last host of Mr. Zelensky's regime after completing the liberation of part of the Yakutsk region from Kyiv in August last year. According to the New York Post, on March 18th, according to the U.S. Time, U.S. President Donald Trump warned that the U.S. could join the Russian-Ukrainian war if the conflict escalated into a third war. Mr. Trump commented in an interview with Laura Ingraham of Fox News just hours after he ended a phone call on Ukraine with Russian President Vladimir Putin on March 18th. Mr. Trump said, "We want to solve this problem." The U.S. president added that there are many guns pointing at each other and a ceasefire is very difficult. A few days ago, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced 2 plans to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. In it, Plan A is to stop firing and note that the main goal of the U.S. is to ensure a quick ceasefire. But that's not what Russian President Vladimir Putin is thinking about. He does not agree to stop firing for 30 days in a 90-minute phone conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump on March 18th. The Russian leader added that he will temporarily stop attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure for 30 days as a token of his commitment to Russia, which will save the country's energy system. In general, Mr. Trump and the special envoy, family members, and allies seem to want to stay close to Russia to discuss a broader geopolitical issue instead of pressuring Putin about Ukraine. The content of the phone conversation also focused a lot on the idea of restoring relations between Washington and Moscow. However, the two leaders of Russia and the United States did not mention any agreements related to peace that are meaningful to the people of Ukraine. Just a few hours after some of the content of the phone conversation was revealed, the New York Times reported that a guided missile bomb of Russia's attack on Ukraine had damaged electricity in the city of Sloviansk. Airstrikes were also heard all over the country as drones flew over the sky of some cities, including Kyiv, Sumy, and Kharkov. In that context, Mr. Trump in the Fox News program stated that Russia is benefiting and is protecting Ukrainian soldiers on the battlefield. Mr. Trump said they were completely surrounded, and this is not good. Accordingly, the U.S. president said that he was promoting a broader ceasefire to keep the U.S. forces from a bigger conflict. Mr. Trump said with the intention of not wanting the war to continue. Let's see, we are doing this, and there are no Americans involved. This can happen. That is, the Americans involved in the war if it turns into World War III, a very funny thing. The talks in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Kyiv said they agreed to a 30-day ceasefire proposed by Washington, with the condition that Russia also agreed. Putin said Russia was willing to agree to the U.S. proposed ceasefire, but then issued a list of requirements that Kyiv and Washington had to meet for Moscow to hold peace talks. Peter Layton, a military expert at the Royal British Military Academy in Russia, said both sides will try to rearm during the ceasefire and quickly move forward. Federico Bossari, a defense expert at the European Policy Analysis Center, also argued that the ceasefire would be beneficial for both sides when it comes to issues that both the Ukrainian and Russian forces face. However, Ukraine will still benefit more from a potential ceasefire. Bossari said the ceasefire would allow Ukraine to circle units in key areas on the front lines, such as Shumel, Kutsk, Liman, train new forces, strengthen defense, and provide supplies to advance units. According to him, Russia is moving forward in Kutsk, so the ceasefire could be detrimental to any potential efforts to advance in the area adjacent to Shumel by exploiting the weaknesses of Ukraine in the area. Meanwhile, expert Brookman said that in principle, the agreement on a ceasefire is good for Kyiv because it strengthens the partnership of arms and intelligence between the U.S. and Ukraine. However, in some areas of the front lines, the ceasefire could benefit Russia more than Ukraine at this time. He said that in recent days, the Ukrainian forces have gained significant territories near Togris, while preventing Russian attacks in the southwestern part of Pokrovsk. The Russian forces in these areas are being pulled and lack infrastructure to continue their attacks. Therefore, the ceasefire will benefit Russia more here. Analysts said Ukraine would clearly benefit from stopping Russian attacks and bombing. Moscow has attacked Ukraine's entire territory with UAVs and missiles almost every day. As a result, a large part of Ukraine's energy infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed. Kyiv has retaliated for a deep attack on Russia, with UAV created by this country, as well as attacking border areas with missiles supplied by a foreign country. Although Ukraine has harmed oil refineries, ammunition, and Russian troops, their impact is not too strong compared to Russia's attacks on Ukraine. The missiles supplied by a foreign country are also in short supply. Although Ukraine's long-range attack on Russian bases and infrastructure has had some significant effects, especially forcing Russia to allocate its equipment in less effective ways, it cannot deny that the impact of the long-range attack on the industry and Ukrainian troops is greater. Justin Bronk, a senior researcher in Russia, said, "This is because Russia has a much greater offensive power, especially when it has stronger cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. Therefore, any ceasefire agreement applied to long-range and bombing attacks will certainly benefit Ukraine more than Russia. Suppose all the other factors are still the same." Experts in bursary also argue that Ukraine can add a significant arsenal of anti-aircraft missiles and important energy infrastructure, although Russia can also add its missile arsenal to its arsenal for new attacks. Eric Stileman, a military expert at the Dutch International Relations Institute, said that both air forces do not have air superiority, let alone air superiority in the airspace of the war zone. Elimination of bombings from the airspace may benefit Ukraine a little more. Although the implementation of a ceasefire for air vehicles is achievable, restricting the use of unmanned aircraft is very difficult, because it requires the use of them for one of the sides. However, Russia may also need a break to avoid attacks on Ukrainian unmanned aircraft. Fabian Hauptmann, a defense policy expert at the Oslo nuclear project, said that what Ukraine's offensive campaigns have done is to increase the cost of fighting for Russia. According to him, the effects of different offensive campaigns on both sides, so their effects are also different. Sometimes Ukraine's campaign can be more effective, while at other times, Russia's campaign is more effective. Meanwhile, in the Black Sea, observers say the ceasefire will help Russia to be more comfortable. Meanwhile, Mr. Basri said that in general, the ceasefire will not bring any significant changes in the Black Sea. President Putin has ordered the Russian military to stop attacks on energy facilities. The Kremlin announced on March 18th after a long conversation between the two leaders. The TASS and RIA news agency reported to the Kremlin that President Putin supported Mr. Trump's idea that Russia and Ukraine should stop attacks on energy facilities in 30 days. The president has ordered the military to do so. He added that the leaders also agreed to start negotiations on this issue. However, Putin did not accept the proposal for a larger 30-day ceasefire by the U.S. backing, which Ukraine said it was ready to do. Russian leaders also raised concerns that such a ceasefire could be used by Ukraine to mobilize more troops and rearm during a temporary ceasefire. Mr. Putin also hinted to Mr. Trump that the main condition to prevent the escalation of the conflict and to address the conflict through political and diplomatic measures is to completely terminate foreign military aid and provide intelligence for Kyiv. In a statement, the White House said that President Trump and President Putin agreed to move towards peace, starting with a ceasefire on energy and infrastructure, as well as negotiations on the implementation of a ceasefire on the Black Sea, a complete ceasefire, and permanent peace. 30 large fish were caught by NATO officers in Suza, a province of Kursk, Russia. The 116th Brigade of the Ukrainian Army was rescued, but was ambushed by the Russian Army. The commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, General Shishky, said, however, based on information obtained by Russian and U.S. military sources, the situation is not like General Shishky's statement. The Ukrainian army in the Kursk region is not at risk of being surrounded, and all forces have been pulled to favorable positions. According to the U.S. intelligence, some Ukrainian troops were trapped in the Kursk region, especially in the western region of Suza town, stretching to the Sumy border, including foreign mercenaries and NATO officers as military leaders and other international troops. Currently, the Ukrainian army has no resistance in the above areas. Foreign media reported that the RFAF did not face any resistance, organized and strong in the attack on the village of Gwevo. As soon as the remaining Ukrainian forces confronted the Russian army, they immediately surrendered to save their lives. Some Russian military sources said that the attack by the Russian army blocked the retreat of the RFAF trapped in the western region of Suza. Moreover, according to the RFAF's, many important personnel of the RFAF were trapped in the western region of Suza, which is more than 20 square kilometers in size. According to Sergei Lebedev, the coordinator of the anti-war force of the Russian Federation, about 30 officers from NATO countries were surrounded in the region of Kursk. According to RIA Novosti, these officers were surrounded when they were supporting Ukraine to carry out deep airstrikes into the territory in the Kursk region of Russia. The RIA Novosti news agency quoted Lebedev from the anti-submarine organization Nikolaev, said that there may have been a certain number of Ukrainian soldiers in the Kursk region who could not escape along with the remnants of the defeated formations. Some Russian sources said that up to 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers may have been surrounded, while other sources denied this and only mentioned a small number of Ukrainian soldiers trapped. There is also evidence that foreign troops from the Kursk region have escaped as soon as there is a sign of failure of the AFU here. On the other hand, the presence of foreign troops in the AFU is no longer unusual. For this reason, the AFU sent a defense brigade of 116, with fewer than 1,000 troops, to the Sumy province to return to Kursk to carry out counterattacks and rescue. However, they were surrounded and killed. Russian sources said that the number of officers from NATO countries who were surrounded in the Kursk region had to share the fate with Ukrainian soldiers who did not have time to retreat. The Su-35S fighter jet and the Su-34 bomber are attacking Ukrainian targets with guided missiles. The Patriot system has helped to prevent effective airstrikes from Russia. The video shows an intense combat mission in which Ukrainian soldiers must act quickly to protect the area and knock down the enemy aircraft before the danger spreads. The mission began with an order from the Ukrainian Air Defense. They quickly deployed the Patriot air defense system near the battlefield and used the ANMPQ-65 radar to detect the target in the air. After detecting a Su-35S and the Su-34 bombers together, the group set up a counterattack plan to lure the Russian aircraft into firing position. Immediately, they launched 2 Patriot missiles to destroy the target before the Russian aircraft could counterattack. Everything became chaotic quickly. The Su-35S is not an ordinary aircraft. It is equipped with the Kh-31 missile, a weapon designed to destroy radars like the Patriot. Just shoot one Kh-31 missile and the entire Patriot system, including the launch pad, can be destroyed. In addition, it is always possible that a larger Russian missile like the Iskander will be launched if the Ukrainian air defense does not evacuate quickly. As soon as the first missile flew into the air towards the Su-35S, the Ukrainian air defense received the order to retreat and move quickly. While the Ukrainian air defense retreated in the sky, the first Patriot missile chased the Su-35S, and the Russian aircraft tried a trick to fly low to avoid it. It is a common move of pilots to distract the missile's radar and destroy it close to the ground. But then, a Su-34 bomber appeared from behind, and it also became the target of the Patriot missile. The Patriot system controller revealed that their missile caught up with the Russian fighter, and both Su-35S and Su-34 were lost from the radar screen. The Ukrainian defense group said that they shot down both Russian aircraft. The mission was delayed last year, but has not been revealed yet. Meanwhile, the fighters of the NATO recently launched to intercept Russian aircraft in the Baltic region. According to information from the Lithuanian Ministry of Defense last week, NATO fighters intercepted a Russian An-72 transport aircraft flying over the international airspace. Only a few days later, NATO aircraft continued to intercept 2 Su-27 fighters, 2 Tu-22 hypersonic bombers, and a Russian Il-20 reconnaissance aircraft. At the same time, NATO aircraft were once again dispatched to intercept 2 Tu-22 bombers and 2 Su-27 fighters, as well as an Il-18 passenger aircraft. The Lithuanian Ministry of Defense added that the Russian aircraft flew in a state of radar shutdown, had no flight plan, and often did not maintain wireless communication with the regional control center. The Russian Ministry of Defense said that the Ukrainian army had just launched 5 attacks on demilitarized villages of Demidovka and Pernetsy in the Belgorod region. The Ukrainian campaign included the participation of 200 soldiers and 29 equipment, including 5 tanks. According to the Russian authorities, the attacks were pushed back, forcing 60 soldiers, at least 1 tank, 3 military vehicles, and 7 other equipment. The Russian Ministry of Defense accused Ukraine of wanting to create a negative situation for the phone conversation between President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. However, Andriy Kovalenko, the leader of Ukraine's Anti-Information Center, denied the accusation. Video circulating on the internet shows a Ukrainian tank and some Bradley infantry vehicle manufactured by the United States crossing the anti-tank obstacle placed on the border with Russia. These vehicles were shelled, while other vehicles were shot and attacked by UAVs. At the same time, when asked if Ukraine was operating in the Belgorod region, President Zelensky replied that Ukraine had the right to take the lead to avoid Russia's airstrikes. He said, "We see a new military concentration on the border with the Sumy region. We see what they want to do. They wanted to attack the Sumy, Kharkov, and Zaporizhzhia regions. This is what we see. Okay, we won't let that happen so easily." Meanwhile, on Tuesday, the 6th Special Task Force, under the 12th Special Task Force, recently carried out the Red Quake land-based campaign to launch a decision-making attack on Russian positions near Pokrovsk. A video released by the new Special Task Force showed that the Azov soldiers had an accurate and reasonable attack on Russian positions in the region. In the video, their task was to launch a powerful attack to wipe out Russian positions in Pokrovsk. The Russian forces used these positions to gather troops and prepare for the attack on Pokrovsk. This is why the withdrawal of these positions became a strategic need for the Ukrainian forces. Although the weather was harsh and the terrain was unfriendly, the Azov soldiers carried out the attack at a rapid and precise speed. The footage from the GoPro and the UAV recorded the entire impact of this campaign. The attack of the Azov forces made the efforts of the Russian forces to reinforce the positions near Pokrovsk a disaster. The Russian air defense missile system has destroyed the Ukrainian Shakeup reconnaissance UAV. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that Russian air defense officers have completed a combat mission in the direction of Krasnoyarsk. After receiving the mission, the Tu-21 driver moved to a specific area to control the airspace. Here, the air defense officers began to monitor the situation in the air. Thanks to the close cooperation, the Russian military quickly identified the enemy's UAV, monitored it, and destroyed it. The modern radar system is installed on the Tu-21, allows the operator to detect the exact targets in the air and shoot them down. The Tu-21 is designed to protect military units and important infrastructure from modern air threats, including high-precision weapons, aircraft, helicopters, cruise missiles, guided missiles, and UAVs. The system combines information systems, communication tools, and weapons on a single circuit board to form a compact and effective tactical unit. According to Army Reconnaissance, the Tu-21 system includes the main components such as the 9A331 combat vehicle with all the necessary systems and the 9M34 missile module with 4 9M331 missiles and the 9ER81 straight line. The system is also supported by additional vehicles such as the 9T244 anti-tank transport vehicle, the 9T245 transport vehicle, the 9V888A7M technical service machine, and the 9V888-1M, the 9F116 reconnaissance equipment, the 9F399-1M1 group support machine, and the 9F678 automatic electronic. The Tu-21 has the ability to detect up to 48 targets and attack 2 targets at the same time. The range is up to 27 kilometers, with a 360-degree angle and a range of 32 degrees or 3264 degrees. The system detects targets at a high bond of up to 23 kilometers and attacks targets at a range of 1 kilometer and a height of 0.016 kilometers with a speed of 10 to 700 meters per second, while Shak is a reconnaissance UAV manufactured by the Ukrainian company Uzbek Systems. This UAV has a range of 60 kilometers, flight time 2 hours, maximum speed of 100 miles per hour. The aircraft is equipped with a modern electronic technology that can deal with annoying systems and detect targets for long-range missile systems. The highlight of the Shak is a laser rangefinder and a modern flight balance system. The UAV's surveillance camera is also capable of very good magnification and can operate in many weather conditions. According to Defense Express, Ukrainian media posted a video recording the scene of this country's army using the UAV to attack a T-72 tank and a Russian MTLB armored vehicle in Kharkov. The Ukrainian side said the Phoenix unit used a combination of reconnaissance UAVs and attack UAVs to attack Russian targets. Although the enemy tried to hide their vehicles, the accurate airstrike caused the T-72 tank and the MTLB armored vehicle to explode. Earlier in early March, the Russian Defense Ministry posted a video recording the scene of this country's army deploying the T-72B3M tank to attack Ukrainian targets in Kharkov. At that time, the Russian side said the reconnaissance UAV unit had detected Ukrainian targets and then sent a message to the T-72B3M tank of the 44th Army. The Russian tank then used a high-explosive projectile to destroy targets in the enemy's equipment concentration area. After carrying out an accurate airstrike, the T-72B3M tank quickly changed its position to avoid Ukrainian UAVs. The T-72B3M tank is a modernized version of the T-72B tank currently used by the Russian armed forces. This upgraded version is equipped with advanced armor plates, including composite armor plates and explosive reaction plates, to enhance the defense capabilities of anti-tank missiles as well as other potential threats. However, the T-72B3M tank has a similar design to the T-72 tank, with a control frame in the front of the vehicle, a combat frame in the middle, a motor, and a transmission system in the rear of the vehicle. The T-72 is Russia's main tank. The tank is 9.53 meters long, 3.46 meters wide, 2.19 meters high, and weigh in 4 tons. With a 780 horsepower diesel V841 engine, the T-72 can reach a maximum speed of 60 kilometers per hour on a flat terrain. In terms of firepower, the T-72 has a 125mm 2A46mm cannon with a maximum rate of 8 rounds per minute. In addition, it has a 12.7mm SV gun and a 7.62mm machine gun on the turret. Each new T-72 tank costs from 3 to 4 million USD. Meanwhile, the MTLB is a multi-purpose self-propelled anti-tank vehicle with a Soviet-era origin, equipped with Soviet-era anti-tank guns from the late 1960s. In terms of technical specifications, the MTLB is 6.45 meters long, 2.86 meters wide, 1.86 meters high, weighs 11.9 tons, and weighs 2.5 tons. The vehicle can also pull a MTLB or weapon up to 6.5 tons and carry heavy equipment up to 2 tons. In addition to 2 people, this vehicle can carry up to 11 soldiers. The MTLB's armor can be used for anti-aircraft and self-propelled anti-tank systems, self-propelled artillery, and self-propelled infantry vehicles. The vehicle can also be equipped with many different weapons to increase firepower and meet the needs of each specific mission. This vehicle can be equipped with a 7.62mm PKT gun with a 360-degree rotation on the right side of the turret. The body of the MTLB is made of steel and is fully equipped with the front wheel, and the engine is in front and the rear wheel. The armor of the vehicle provides the ability to protect the driver and soldiers against the firepower of small weapons and artillery. The vehicle is also equipped with the NBC protection system and night vision equipment. The MTLB armored vehicle is currently being used by Russia, Ukraine, as well as the Eastern European countries. Eric Prince, the founder of the private military company Blackwater, recently talked about the Russian military's breakthroughs after 3 years of conflict in Ukraine. Specifically, speaking at Hillsdale College last weekend, Prince also expressed doubts about claims that the Russian military has weakened significantly in the conflict with Ukraine. Prince emphasized that what the Russians are really good at is electronic warfare. He said that advanced weapons, such as Javelin missiles, the HIMARS system, and the Copperhead guided missile, often become less effective only after a few weeks of combat. He said they work for 1 or 2 weeks, and then the Russians find a way to disrupt the positioning system or the command link, and they become useless. Prince also denied claims that the Russian military has weakened significantly after 3 years of war with Ukraine. He emphasized that, first of all, don't listen to politicians saying that we have weakened the Russian military's combat power. No, we're just consuming a lot of equipment. The Russian military has done much better than before. He also pointed out significant improvements in Russian anti-aircraft capabilities compared to 2022 and now. Prince talked about Russia's military capabilities and the Russian military's capabilities. He also said that the Russian military has improved significantly compared to 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly compared to 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly 2022 and now. Has improved significantly compared to 2022 and now. 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly compared to 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly compared to 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly compared to 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly compared to 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly 2022 and now. The Russian military has improved significantly. The Independent quoted a Ukrainian ambassador saying that the Ukrainian forces had to fight in an overwhelming position with a force ratio of at least 3-1, even up to 6-1. This person emphasized that the Russian forces had significantly increased the use of their UAVs in recent weeks. He said that the Russian giant UAVs are on the main retreat route of the Ukrainian army. They are controlled by UAV pilots with higher skills than before, especially FPVs. He also described the armored vehicles, trucks, ambulances, artillery, and other Ukrainian military equipment having to go through a dangerous journey when moving to the border. In the daytime, these vehicles can easily become Russian targets. but at nightfall, the situation becomes more objective. However, the UAVs are equipped with night vision systems and thermal sensors and can still accurately identify Ukrainian targets. However, the Ukrainian ambassador denied Putin's statement that the Ukrainian army was fleeing the chaos and said that the Ukrainian forces had not yet fully recovered, although some small units may have lost contact and were at risk of being surrounded. Recently, Moscow announced that it had controlled Sochi, the largest town that the Ukrainian forces had occupied in Kursk. However, the Ukrainian ambassador said that part of the Ukrainian forces remained in the outskirts of the town and continued fighting. At the end of last week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned that there were signs that Russia was preparing to move troops from Kursk to the Sumy region, as the ambassador confirmed that Russian small groups had entered Sumy from many points along the border, but had all been pushed back. Moscow is trying to regain full control of Kursk from Ukraine and to expand the territory of control along the 1,000-kilometer-long front. In the context that the two sides are moving closer to the negotiating table, President Donald Trump recently said he would discuss directly with his Russian counterpart Putin on March 18th about a 30-day suspension of fire on the entire front. A deal had been signed by Ukraine before. During talks with the United States on Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin stressed the recognition of the annexation of Crimea and 4 regions of Ukraine into the Russian Federation. This statement was made by journalist Andrei Kolesnikov of the Kommersant, Putin's spokesman, at a meeting with witnesses. At the meeting, Putin said right from the beginning that Kyiv had a chance to escape the conflict with little bloodshed in every sense. The Kommersant spokesman told the witnesses that they needed to listen to Putin and start talking. Putin said first about the recognition of Crimea, then, when it was clear that they did not want to listen, about the recognition of the sovereignty of the Lugansk and Donetsk republics, as well as the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions as a part of Russia, and the further back Russia could be stopped, the fewer opportunities to reach an agreement. And finally, it turned out that it could no longer be stopped. That is, like now, Ukraine has no time to dig deep. Currently, according to sources, the talks revolve around the fact that what has been achieved cannot be taken away from Russia and Crimea. Sevastopol and 4 territories should be recognized as part of Russia. The Lugansk and Donetsk republics, the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. If this happens in the near future, Russia will not declare sovereignty over Odessa and other territories in Ukraine. But this point of view can change because they do not have time to dig deep. At the same time, those who attended the meeting noted that, according to their point of view, Putin believes that he can reach an agreement with Trump. Meanwhile, hundreds of Western companies have left Russia since Moscow launched a military campaign in Ukraine in February 2022. Some companies have sold assets or handed them over to other managers, or even left their assets. Some companies, such as Renault, McDonald's, and Henkel, have stopped buying. Speaking at a business forum in Moscow, Putin said he had instructed the government to monitor Western companies with a buyback agreement to ensure that all cases are considered carefully. Putin affirmed his respect for businesses continuing to cooperate with Russia, but he has a different point of view with companies that have closed their doors in a way of challenging when they leave. But companies that have left due to political pressure and have sold assets at a low price will not be allowed to buy again at such a low price. The Russian leader emphasized that if the business sector of a Western company has been replaced by a Russian business, then, as we say, the ship has sailed. He also reminded the Russian business community that Western sanctions with a total of 28,195 orders, according to the Ministry of Finance, are not only temporary. He said that even if some sanctions were lifted, the West would still find ways to impose other sanctions. Hungary, a country that previously opposed the EU's extension of sanctions on Russia, has changed its stance after direct intervention from the U.S. It is known that the phone call between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Tricito played an important role in this. In the conversation, Rubio persuaded his Hungarian counterpart to abandon his intention to block the sanctions and allow the EU to maintain unity in the policy of pressure on Moscow. In January, Budapest threatened to repeal the extension of the restrictions because Donald Trump was elected president of the United States and expected to see changes in Washington's foreign policy. The Hungarian government has repeatedly emphasized that the sanctions are damaging their energy security, especially in the context that the country depends on Russia's supply. However, After talks with Rubio, Foreign Minister Trudeau agreed to support the extension of the sanctions for another 6 months. A surprising step for a country that traditionally maintains a special position in the EU on the issue of Russia. Hungary's decision allows the EU to approve the next phase of the sanctions regime on March 17, 2025. This version has been in force since 2010 and has been updated regularly to respond to Russia's actions. According to Bloomberg, the agreement was reached after Budapest received a number of guarantees related to the energy supply, although the specific details of the agreement are still a secret. Negotiations with Hungary reflect a broader context of interaction between the United States and Europe in the context of the change in Washington's government. Since Trump returned to the White House in January 2025, Washington has always been actively trying to coordinate policy with its allies. In early March, the United States sent a delegation to Brussels to discuss the sanctions, emphasizing the need for joint action against Russia. Reuters reported that at the same time, Trump also announced his intention to review his approach to the conflict in Ukraine. This raises concerns in Europe about the possibility that the U.S. will be softer in position. Previously, Hungary, on March 14th, agreed to stop the repeal and allowed the EU to extend the sanctions to more than 2,400 individuals and entities, mainly from Russia, which the bloc imposed to respond to Moscow's campaign in Ukraine. This list includes hundreds of military commanders, government officials, businessmen, and Wagner members. They were blocked from property in the EU and banned from entering or crossing the EU territories. Hungary previously opposed the extension of the sanctions aimed at both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Secretary of State Vladimir Putin, fearing that this would hamper efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Hungary in January also postponed the repeal before agreeing to extend the EU sanctions aimed at the Russian economy due to the conflict with Ukraine on the issue of gas resources. Budapest only agreed to stop the repeal after Brussels pledged to review Hungary's actions. Prime Minister Orbán is seen as the most friendly person to Russia among NATO leaders. He has repeatedly called on the alliance to limit interference in the Ukrainian conflict, support the promotion of negotiations instead of supporting weapons for Kyiv, and extend the conflict. U.S. and Israeli allies' unusual moves are signs that an attack on Iran could happen in the near future. U.S. President Donald Trump's negative attitude towards Iran has been known for a long time, right from his first term when he pulled Washington out of the Iran nuclear deal and imposed sanctions on Tehran. Right after his second term, experts began to speculate that the U.S. and Israel are planning to launch a war against Iran, a threat to the Middle East and the global oil and gas market. Moreover, these talks appeared even before Tehran rejected threats and money from the U.S. related to Iran's nuclear program. Now, reports from Iran have begun to appear in a state of serious disruption and expansion of the Internet and global GPS systems. Middle Eastern sources said that U.S. President Ali Khamenei had ordered senior officials of the country a day earlier to prepare for possible situations in the near future, including a war launched by the U.S. and Israel. On March 18, the Tehran government announced that a U.S. unmanned reconnaissance aircraft had to change course and fly out of Iran's airspace on March 17 after the U.S. forced a U.S. F-14 fighter jet and U.S. reconnaissance aircraft to leave Iran's airspace. U.S. sources said that Iran's armed forces were in high alert and ready for an all-out attack against the enemy's interests in the Middle East. Meanwhile, in the midst of tensions between Israel and Iran and armed clashes between Israel and Iran by Tehran, bomb shelters began to be opened in Israel's cities. Earlier, along with U.S. airstrikes on Yemen, with the intensity that President Trump promised to continue, Israel also continued to drop bombs on Gaza. In return, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made some interesting statements about Iran and the Islamic State of Houthis in Yemen. He said that the Houthis would not be able to do what they wanted without Tehran's support. The Yemeni rebel forces have learned how to build advanced UAVs with the full support of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran, the IRGC. He said that Iran was helping the Houthis to produce these drones by providing them with technology, equipment, as well as financial support. He stressed that Iran had created this terrifying monster in Yemen, and now they will have to take responsibility for it.